Well, welcome to another edition of Fire and Training. I'm your host, Douglas Cline, and I'm excited to talk about a topic tonight that is kind of near and dear and passionate to me. And it's called Preserving the Past While We Flavor Our Future. As we get into this, one of the things I want you to know is Fire and Training is dedicated to the men and women who are out on the streets 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, always working to make things better, always working to be the best that they can be. And our goal is to make sure everyone goes home. So as we begin talking about preserving our past while we're flavoring our future, one of the things that I want to start to say is that we're going to take a journey today. We're going to talk about the past, we're going to talk about the present, we're going to talk about the future. So when we begin doing that, our past is very, very important. We're currently standing on the shoulders of giants that have built foundations. They have weathered storms. They have put together programs and organizations. And here's the biggest part about that. We can see farther now than what they could. And it's because we're standing on their shoulders. It's because we have the ability to have the information they had to see the insights. But part of what happens is we do not preserve our past very well in a lot of cases. One of the things I get into and see frequently is that when you go to departments, they do not have necessarily the history captured. You might have a few books that have some articles and maybe a few photos in there, but what do we have from our past? What do we really know about the organization and what's being shared and passed down from generation to generation? Are we telling stories, so to speak, of what occurred and how we got from where we were at to where we're at currently? I know that traveling around, I've had the opportunity to go to a lot of different places, and especially in the Northeast. And I think about one that's coming up very shortly that I'll be going to is the Addison County Regional School, which is up in Addison County, just south of Burlington, Vermont, and Virgins and Bristol and that area. But you go in the firehouses there, and their history is truly preserved. They have, hose carts from the past. They have engines from the past that are like glassed in and showcased. They have equipment. They have trophies. They have just all these pictures everywhere you go. They have albums of things, and they talk about where they came from. And they constantly have that focus on there. So the biggest thing is looking at our past. And, I finished up 46 years here recently. And, it's kind of interesting when I think about it. And I go back and I go back through some of the stuff I have from my history and what I preserved from that. And one of the pictures shows me at a fire back in 1985 at Athens High School in West Virginia after being, in a department there. It was a volunteer department. There were three of us that responded to this high school that was on fire in the gymnasium. And, all the operations we did. And there was a picture captured from across the street in the newspaper that, I kept. It was part of the history. And I look back at that and think about where I've been and where I've come from. And you never forget that. You never forget where you came from. And, we need to be preserving that. Now, when I think back to all my time of beginning, becoming a paramedic in 83, I worked with the Life Pack 5 monitor. It had leads and paddles. If you wanted different, leads like lead 1, 2, 3 AVL, you had to move those leads around to get that. And that was pretty, important, back then to learn that. And then the second generation Life Pack 5 came out and had leads 1, 2, 3 AVL and paddles. You can move them around by just switching a button. But I go back to when I really started and talk about the history there. I went out January 29th, 1979 in a small town called Mullins, West Virginia. And when I went outside, I was the kid that would not leave the firehouse. They had to do something with me. They created a junior program, and they took me outside. And I had 3/4 boots, a rubber coat with wool lining, corduroy collar. They gave me orange fireball gloves, plastic helmet, big floppy shield. They gave me a sponge to filter breathe. All these are the things that were occurring. So they took me outside and they said, hey, we're going to show you some things. So they gave me an Akron selective flow nozzle on an 1.5-inch hose line. They put it on 95 GPMs. They told me, said, if you turn it to the right, it has reach. It becomes a straight stream. If you turn it to the left, it fogs out, and that's for life. And I'll never forget the fire chief telling me, said, boy, if you put your face down on that nozzle, you can breathe. So, I was all excited. So, I kind of perched myself and went ahead and fogged it out, put my face down there. And of course, I hadn't tightened the shield up very well, and it fell down in that hose stream. I like to drown, and I'll never forget what was said. It was, I don't know what we're going to do with this next generation of the fire service that's coming in. Well, unfortunately, the next generation of fire service will continue to come, and we have to learn how to deal with, generations as they come. One of the things that sticks out to me, and this was really one of the big pieces that I'll never forget in mentoring and coaching, is a guy by the name of Jerry Green comes over to me. He had been, helping me out or dropping keys out of the window to give it to me so I could let myself in the firehouse. He spent time sharing things, showing me things, teaching me, as I was going along. I was that pestering kid. When he comes over, tightens those up, and he said, that won't fall down now, so let's try it again. And I'll never forget that. And that's that level of coaching that we really need to have, that we really need to see and do. The fire trucks we rode, actually one of them had an open cab. The ambulances we rode were like the Cadillac ambulances. That was something really unique. I'll never forget that. And they used to tell me, don't pull that SCBA out of the compartment. We got to fill that up. That is our past. A lot of people say, well, why do you want to preserve that? Well, that's where we came from. That's our heritage. I mean, it goes back to many generations, even before me, with firefighting, that had horses and horse-drawn carriages, and they had to take care of the horses. And, they actually pulled hose. They actually had the hand-pumping hose that we had to do. So that's truly important, keeping that history. One of the things that I want you to do as a listener, and I want you to be thinking about, is I want you to become the salt. Now, we've all heard about, we've got one of those salt firefighters, a salty old firefighters that's been around a while. But in our history, we know as we go back, generations and generations and generations, many years ago, if you had salt, you were actually a very rich person because you had the ability to preserve food. Now, we still do preserve foods with salt, in our modern processes. When I was growing up as a child, I know that we used to take hams, from any time that we, would go out and we would butcher, we'd take a ham, we'd put it in a bunkhouse, we'd wrap it up, put salt on it, and it cured it. And it was called salt cured ham, or what they call country ham. But salt does, truly preserve things. And if you look at even the canned goods today, you see it has a lot of salt in them, and that helps preserve it. It also flavors things. So anytime we're talking about flavoring things, I want you to be thinking about the future. Anytime we talk about salt and we're preserving things, I want you to be thinking about our past, our history. We need to make sure that our organizations are preserving our history. We need to know where we came from. We need to truly understand that in the concepts of, this is where we were, this is how we progressed, this is where we are currently in present time, and this is where we're going in the future, the next generation, so to speak. So as we begin looking to preserving things in our past, we need to work on that very, diligently. Sometimes we need to capture some of these stories. They need to be written down. It'd be great to have, books of stories, in your firehouse of things that occurred, the people that came through, rosters, the time periods the members served, the pictures of those members. Those are important. Those are truly important, and we need to be thinking about that. But again, as we begin going forward, we're living in the current today. This is the present. So in 10 minutes from now, it is the future. 30 seconds ago, when we were talking about salt, that's the past now. But what we want to do is I want to encourage you to be the salt. I want you to be the ones that are flavoring the future as we go forward. Now, reality of today is things have drastically changed. I don't wear 3/4 boots anymore. I don't have a rubber coat. I don't have a sponge. I don't have a lot of those things. Um, I love looking at them. I love seeing them, but we don't have those. So we're flavoring the future. I want you to become the salt that takes us forward. I want you to be the one that's flavoring all of our future and the next generation. That's super, super important. So how do we do that? How do we go about doing it? Well, part of what you have to do is you have to maintain a clear vision of where you're going or an understanding of your roles and responsibilities. To mentor and to educate those around you, regardless of the rank or stature or whatever it may be. Here's the thing I'm going to tell you. Rank does not make you a leader. Rank does not, afford you those abilities to lead or to coach or to mentor. Leadership is truly about characteristics and traits. But anytime we're going to go and start flavoring our future, I want you to understand that we have to keep a very, very vigilant look at what our mission, what our visions, what our values are. That's very important. And we also have to be dedicated to our roles and teaching folks and the understanding of those. And you have to coach, you have to mentor, you have to educate, you have to share. Regardless of your rank, regardless of where you're at, what you're doing, you have got to do that. Now, here's how you do that. You have to have and you have to foster a passion for learning and training and education and getting people to see things differently, sharing information with them. Old saying that I've seen many, many times, and I've talked about many times on some of our shows. It was on a wall of a fire station in Henderson, North Carolina, and it said, "The future belongs to those who prepare." Well, think about it. We need to be preparing people. We need to prepare ourselves. But to do that, we have to foster that passion for learning, for training. We have to be hungry for knowledge and education. We have to be willing to self-develop. We have to be willing to take some risks. And we got to do that throughout our career. And we got to teach that to the next generation as well so that they're sharing it. Because one of the things that I'll tell you is as we go along and we start thinking about some of these pieces to the puzzle that are there, the person that comes to my mind is Chief Brunacini. I had an opportunity in 1993 to go to Cincinnati, Ohio to FDIC. We're just weeks away from FDIC in Indianapolis for 2026. This was 1993, long time ago. But I was fortunate enough to be taken by somebody that became a very, very strong mentor and somebody that became a real coach and a leader in my life, which was Dan Jones. And he took me to FDIC. I had an opportunity to go as an advocate. In other words, if you go to FDIC today and you see the folks that are monitoring the doors and checking you in, those are students and volunteers. That's exactly what I was. But it was back in the time period we didn't have PowerPoints and those things. It was slides and overhead projectors, those type of components. So I helped set up rooms, sweep rooms, clean rooms, but I was fortunate to have the opportunity that he took us to an instructor get together, and it was a coat and tie event. It was one of those things that I really felt out of place. When I got in there, I was like, I have no business being in here. I'm looking around. I'm seeing all the instructors, that are there at FDIC, the people that I'm reading their articles, the books, those type of things. I was like, holy cow, why am I here? So I was there. They did have free beer, so that was a good thing. I did take the opportunity to grab one of those, but I kind of positioned myself to where my back was against the wall. I didn't want to get blindsided. So I'm standing there and I'm kind of taking in what's going on and having a good time watching things. And in walks this guy in a Hawaiian shirt. And I'm thinking, they lost his luggage or he did not get the memo about the dress code here. But everybody flocked to him. It was like, boom, they were right on top of him. And I'm like, oh, he must be somebody. I better go that way and get a little closer at least so I don't look out of place. So I did. I moved closer, kind of hung out while everything was going on. And then as the crowd began to break up, I backed up and kind of went back to the wall. And I can remember before going out there, I had picked a class. It was called The Art of Reading Smoke. I had read Dave Dotson's, materials, and I heard volume, velocity, density, and color. And it's like, holy cow, that's Dave Dotson. That's a class I'm going to. And he was over here talking about it. And I got the opportunity. I just came off the wall a little bit, got a little closer. Well, I got to where I could get blindsided, so to speak. So out of the corner of my eye, I catch the guy in the Hawaiian shirt. And my whole idea was, in thought process was, he'll just keep going by me. Well, all of a sudden, Chief Brunacini just stops right at me. And everybody's got one of those little birdies that come up on the shoulder and say, don't say anything stupid or something to that effect, or don't do that. Well, I had my little birdie pop up and says, don't say anything stupid. So he comes up to me and it's like, I can't believe he just stopped here. So he asked me, he said, hey, kid. And he always called me kid. He said, hey, kid, you enjoying FDIC? So I rehearsed this answer multiple times so I'd get it right. I said, yes, sir. It's an honor and a privilege to be an advocate here at FDIC. I cherish the opportunity. Now, I practiced that. I don't know how many times going, up to FDIC. He said, good. And they were playing music, and it happened to be classical music. And he asked me, and little birdie the whole time going, shut up, just shut up. And he asked me, he said, do you know what type of music this is? And I said, yes, sir, it's classical. And, in Chief Brunacini's, unique way, he's like, okay. And then he looked at me, and before the birdie could speak, he goes, by chance, do you know the composer? And I had a music class when I was in college. And let me tell you what, all I wanted was a C, and I wanted to get out of there. That was not my favorite class. The instructor that I had was young. He was passionate. The same things I'm telling you to do, he was. And it drove me insane. I mean, I just like, God, let me get through this class period and get out of here. So, but I had to study, to make the grade and to do the things I needed to do. And the whole time I was in there, I'm thinking, this guy is so passionate about music. He is just the guy that just loves music. And I'm like, I don't like this type of music. I don't understand why he does. Well, needless to say, it probably changed my life for the fact that I was in that class. But what he used to do was he would talk about the oboes playing, especially with Tchaikovsky. So when Chief Brunacini asked me that, and like I said, I mocked this guy quite a bit. I mean, I really was. I was a jerk. And Chief Brunacini said, well, by chance, do you know the composer? And before the birdie could speak, I reacted exactly how I mocked the instructor. And I said, yes, it's Tchaikovsky, Dance of the Toy Flutes from the Nutcracker Suite. Can you hear the oboes playing? Now, y'all are laughing right now. I did that. Can you imagine how embarrassed I've got to be for right in front of this guy and doing, something stupid like that? And little birdie told me, he says, you're an idiot. I kind of agreed with him at that point. Yeah, I'm an idiot. But Chief Brunacini, in his unique way, said, that's good. He said, I like a guy that has a good, diverse educational background. You'll be on main stage with me tomorrow. And at that point in time, I began stammering and stuttering. I got to ask my chief. He said, don't worry about it. I'll talk to Dan for you. And he kind of walked off. Well, the fire chief that took me was Dan Jones. And I'm sitting there at this point in time. A good thing they had free beer. So I went and got me another beer. So I had 2 beers. And I kind of chuckle about this. I make a joke out of this. On national television, there was a basketball player from North Carolina State University. He was in an interview. He was actually a very talented basketball player. And he did hook shots with both hands down in the paint. And they asked him about being able to do that. And he said, yeah, it's good to be amphibious. The word is ambidextrous. But again, I was standing there with 2 beers, in my hand. I'm like, I guess I'm amphibious. And I chuckle about that when I tell that story. And I use this story multiple times and in various programs that I deliver. But, I'm thinking the whole time, I'm fired. the boss said, I'm going to be walking home. So the next thing I know, I'm standing there, and here comes Chief Jones by. Oh, I hear you're going to be on main stage tomorrow. Oh, that's great. I'm like, oh, that's pretty cool. He ain't mad at me, at least. I'm getting on stage, and I'm like, oh my God, what am I going to do? I'm rubbing my head, and my mind's blown, and I'm like, I don't know what I'm going to do. So the next day, and I'm trying to get myself together. Going out on main stage in 1993 was very difficult. It was overwhelming. That same opportunity came, many years later when I got a chance to go out on main stage of FDIC and present the George D. Post Award twice during my presidency with ISFSI. Yes, you walk out on that stage, and when you've got to speak to that many people, it is a little overwhelming. It will take you back a bit. But we went out on stage, we had a good time, and from that point forward, Chief Brunacini became a coach, he became a mentor, he became a personal friend, and that was really one of the unique components to it, as people like that. So when I think about that, I think about the ripple effect. I think about how much impact people have on a daily basis. I think about what impact you could have on a daily basis with the people as you coach and mentor them, and especially new people that come in, and anybody you come in contact, how much of an influence you can be with them. So I want you to realize how powerful you are as one person and what your ripple effect can do. And you have the ability to truly flavor the future with what you do. And it all starts with you. It all begins with you and what you do. You can have a tremendous impact. In fact, Chief Brunacini still today has an impact on the fire service, as his books, as things that he shared with people that are captured. That's that preservation of our history. But he also lives, and he's also influencing folks through people like me that had the opportunity to be around such a phenomenal individual, phenomenal coach, leader, instructor, personal friend. I mean, you just can't think enough about a person, and you can't thank them enough for what they did for me. And the same thing with Dan Jones. I mean, that was an opportunity to get there. Now, thinking about this, it took a little bit of time to kick in. Is, first of all, how did Chief Brunacini, who I did not know that Dan Jones was the fire chief and my fire chief? How did I get picked out of that crowd? Well, that was kind of one of those things I will tell you was a setup. Dan Jones obviously wanted me to get out of my comfort zone a little bit. He wanted me to explore some things that I probably would not have been an opportunist and took it. So he helped me along with my opportunities and, my ability to become an opportunist, because he took his foot and just pushed me out in front of the bus. I mean, it was pretty cool, but nerve-wracking at the time, but pretty cool in the long run. And, I'm so thankful to have people like that in my life that were mentors and coaches, and how they infected me with such a love and a passion for the job. I mean, it was like they took and injected something in me that got me started. So it all begins with you, just like it began with Dan Jones, just like it did with Chief Brunacini with me. And as I'm sharing with you now, asking you, begging you, in a sense, to be the salt, to be those individuals like Chief Brunacini and many, many others that are out there, today. One that comes to mind is the opportunities I was given and afforded by Bobby Halton, and now by Chief David Rhodes, and the whole FDIC and fire engineering family, from Clarion, just the opportunities we get and how we get an opportunity to influence other people. So it starts with you, but also by it starting with you, we're standing on a good foundation right now. We're where we're at today because of what other people did for us. We're where we're at today because of opportunities that were afforded to us. In other words, we're building the wall, or we're building the foundations to go. And that's called a legacy. So one of the pictures that Paul Combs captures is firefighters that are by this wall, and it's got a brick with legacy on it, and they're like passing it to the next generation. That's what I want to challenge you with. That's what I want to do, is kind of pass you the brick for you to begin, continuing building on the legacies that have occurred from our past, the things that we should be preserving. That's one of them. This coaching and mentoring and building people up and getting them to the next level and providing them opportunities, just like what so many people did for me. I want you to be able to do that as well. And I want to afford those opportunities to you. And you are the legacy. You're the ones that are going to influence and flavor the next generation. And you need to instill that in them as well. So this is kind of a continuing process that continues to go on and on and on and on. So when I say that, I'm going to put the ball at this point in time over in your court. What are you going to do about it? I'm going to challenge you. I'm going to challenge you to be the salt. I'm going to challenge you to be the salt that preserves our past and our heritage, not only in the fire service, but in your organizations and the things that you have learned. I'm challenging for that. I'm also going to challenge you to be the salt that flavors the future. So the challenge has been issued. What are you going to do with it? That's going to be up to you. But I can promise you, as long as I got breath in my body, I'm going to continue trying to give back everything that was given to me. I want to repay that to anybody and everybody who's willing to take it, because there were so many people that poured things out in my life. There's so many people that I cannot think. I can't go through the list to thank them. We'd be here for days. But the way that I can repay them is by paying it forward. And that's what I want to do here. That's the concept behind this fire and training program. From a training aspect, this is actually a training side for our, profession. I want you to do that. So I've issued you a challenge.